Welcome, everybody. My name is Marty Mascari. I am a contractor with the North Central Texas Area Agency on Aging and the North Central Texas Aging and Disability Resource Center. Both are under the umbrella of the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and we are located in the greater Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. We are very blessed to have our friend Dr. Mottern with us today to talk about cumulative stress and self-care. He's done quite a few webinars for us, and he has a following because people ask me when is he going to do another one. So we're glad to have you here, Doctor. But before we get started, I want to go over two things. First of all, for questions that you would like for Dr. Mottern or me to answer, please put those in the Q&A and not in the chat. It just makes it much more much easier for us to get at them and answer them at the end, as opposed to having to scroll through the chat in between everything and try to find the questions. So I'm going to ask you to please put those in the Q&A. But as far as for those people that are joining us today that are looking for CEUs or a certificate of attendance, we're providing both. We are providing CEUs, or we're set up to provide CEUs for licensed social workers and licensed professional counselors in the state of Texas. If you have a different license in Texas, or you have a license outside of Texas, you are more than welcome to go through the process, the same process, get a certificate, and you can issue it to them. I just don't know whether they're going to take it, and if they don't, there's nothing I can do to help you with that. But you're more than welcome to go through the process. And please note, for a certificate of attendance, requirements are the same. You must attend the entire webinar. You must be on all the way until 3:30, unless we finish up early. You must also complete the Google evaluation survey. That survey will pop up as you close out of Zoom today. It should say, would you like to take a short survey or something to that. And you just click on that, it will take you to it. If not, I realize some of you work for companies with pop-up blockers. That link will also go out in the follow-up email that will go out tomorrow. So look for that. And then that link will be open for a week from tomorrow. And if you would give me about 4 weeks after that to get them out. I'm getting caught up, but it's been a journey. So if you could give me about 4 weeks, if you don't have it, then please feel free to email me and I'll check into it. So Dr. Mottern, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. It's good to be back once again. It's been quite a while. Been about a year since we were here the last time. But today we're going to look at cumulative stress and self-care. And I did see a question in the chat earlier. It said, well, what's the difference between today's and tomorrow's presentations? Today is on the cumulative stress part of this, and everybody is exposed to cumulative stress. Okay, it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. If you live in today's world, except perhaps maybe in Tibet or someplace, if you're in a monastery, then you have to deal with cumulative stress. The compassion fatigue has more to do with dealing with people, okay, where I take on, in some circles, compassion fatigue is synonymous with secondary trauma or vicarious trauma, where I've just sort of reached the end of my rope on dealing with people, generally in a professional capacity, but that can also happen with caregivers. If I'm caregiving with the family or something like that, I may very well get compassion fatigue from having to deal with that all the time. But those are sort of really the difference. There's some people who work that don't have to deal with people a whole lot, and so they would be more interested in the cumulative stress, where the compassion fatigue is if you're caring for other people, if you have to deal with other people and interact with them, that's the compassion fatigue instead of the cumulative stress. So today, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the cumulative stress part of this. And what we want to do is we want to look at the nature of cumulative stress. What is this? How is it different from maybe chronic stress? I want to remind you of some of the effects of stress, okay? We all know stress is bad for us, but we forget just how bad stress can be for us. So just want to remind you of a few of those things. Then we want to look at, so what can I do about it, right? So I've got this cumulative stress in my life. So what are some of the evidence-based practices we can use to take care of ourselves? And then we're going to practice a couple of these. Okay, so this isn't just we're not just going to talk about it. We're going to practice a couple a day. At the end of the session, you should be able to use these in your own life. We're going to go through them. The material is in the handout. That's the reason I wanted to use the handout. The PowerPoint for this is about 4 slides long, which you want if you work for the state. I don't know if any of you ever worked for the state before, but they have to critique everything that goes out. So it's just much easier to put this into a handout than trying to put it into a long PowerPoint. We're limited on the font size and everything else. So it's much easier for a handout, and it gives you a tool that you can use later on. Instead of having to pull up a handout, you can just print this out, and Marty has provided you with a PDF of this, and he'll provide it afterwards, I'm sure, so everybody can get a hand on this, and then use this as you go forward. So the first thing we will talk about is what is cumulative stress, and we really first came up with this idea of cumulative stress back during COVID-19. Okay, when what we saw during that time is we saw a lot of people who were pretty good at dealing with stress in their life, people who already had chronic stressors in their life. But during that time, they started to sort of develop some chinks in the armor, right? They started to sort of fray around the edges. And we're talking about professionals, right? So doctors, nurses, these people. And we said, well, why is this going on? What's happening here? And really what we saw was that, we're pretty good, like I said, at dealing with chronic stress in our life. What happens is we have stress, it goes up, sort of peaks, we get to the point where we know we need to do something about it. So we implement whatever stress management we use, and it goes back down, and then we'll let it go until it gets high again. And then we'll reach that same point, and it just sort of goes up and down like waves, right? And that's what we have at that blue line there on that x-axis. On the horizontal blue line at the bottom that's sort of the chronic stress. So if you just took a line and drew it across the tops of those waves, the tops of those peaks of chronic stress, where it's just going up and down, that gives us where we are on the chronic stress. But what we saw with cumulative stress was we would get up, that stress would start to build. And then what happened is we had stress in so many areas of our life. And during COVID-19, you will recall, it was in all areas of our life. Okay. That we had to deal with this, even if if you didn't want to get vaxxed, if you didn't believe in it, that's fine, but you're not going to fly anywhere without that paperwork, right? Or you can't go in certain places, you can't go visit your loved ones in nursing homes, things like this. So we had stress in our life, no matter what our situation. And once that went up, even before we could implement stress management, if we weren't already implementing stress management on a daily basis, we had another stressor on top of that. And then once again, before we could do anything, we had another stressor on top of that, and another stressor on top of that. So what we got was this cumulative stress, which was chronic stress piled on top of chronic stress, piled on top of chronic stress. Okay, so that's really what we're calling that cumulative stress. You can see that red line there, right? It just went up, and then we'd have another stressor and another stressor and another stressor. And at that point, we really couldn't do anything much about it. And that's why we saw people sort of having such a hard time. Well, even though we're sort of past that now, I mean, we may be getting back into it. It's an election year, but that aside, even though we're sort of past that, a lot of those stressors are still with us. A lot of the stuff that called us is still here. So cumulative stress hasn't gone anywhere. We're still having to deal with that stress piled on top of stress, piled on top of stress. Okay. So that's not good. That's not good for us. That's bad for us. So let me remind you of just how bad that sort of cumulative stress, that chronic stress on top of chronic stress can be. Okay. One of the things that this kind of stress does is it atrophies brain structures and prevents neurogenesis. So neurogenesis is the formation of new neurons in the brain, and that is what we call learning. Okay, that's what learning is. You're going to have to define learning, Okay, learning is the formation of new neural connections in the brain, formation of new neurons in the brain. Okay, and that is delayed, that is interfered with by stress. We become stressed, that stuff slows down and even is prevented from happening. So remember back during COVID-19, people talked about, I had a difficult time learning things, difficult time comprehending new things or remembering new things, can't remember as well, called that, that sort of fog that we get, that brain fog associated with it. A lot of that was just stress. A lot of that was just that cumulative stress, and so much stress in our lives that it prevented that sort of learning. It hindered and interfered with memory as well. So we have a saying that stress makes us stupid. Okay, and that's what it does. So you may have experienced that yourself at some point. If you're in school or something, studied all night for a test, and then the next day, I couldn't remember anything. I was so stressed, couldn't remember anything about what I've studied the night before, right? So we have that sort of saying that stress makes us stupid. But also, even those brain structures that are already there, chronic stress will begin to atrophy those brain structures. So what we see in the brain itself is we see a reduction in hippocampal volume and function. Now, the hippocampus, I'm not going to teach a class in neurology here, but the hippocampus is learning and memory. Okay, that's what it is. What the hippocampus does is learning and memory. And we see that actually begin to shrink when we have chronic stress, especially this cumulative stress that we have. So that's not good. Okay, that's not good for us. Stress, oh yeah, stress is bad. Yeah, I'll do something about it. Do something about it pretty quick. Okay, because the long-term effects of it are not good. We know that this kind of stress can cause symptoms of depression. We know it can cause post-traumatic stress disorder. We know that stress during pregnancy produces all kinds of setbacks in the developing fetus, and that go through the years. The research we have on this, one of the premier research studies that we have on this is the Dutch hunger winter study. It was from World War II, when the Nazis tried to starve the Dutch people to death during one particular winter. And so the Dutch were studying that, and they looked at women who were pregnant during that time, during that Dutch hunger winter, versus those before and those after. And what they found were there was a profound effect, because remember, the developing fetus has no protection from the stress hormones. Okay, that adrenocorticotropic hormone, which kicks off cortisol, fetuses have no protection against that whatsoever. So they're just awash in those stress hormones, and that has long-term effects. So this was a study with thousands of people. It was a longitudinal study. It went for decades. They followed these children after they were born, and then they continued to follow them for decades after that. And what they saw was that in these particular children who were stressed during that time in the womb, and the mother was stressed. That was causing the stress hormones. We saw unsocial behavior in these people, ADHD, sleep disturbances, and sleep is so very important to the regulation of stress. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Saw development of psychiatric disorders more so than in the populations before or after that particular time. Depressive symptoms, substance use disorders, mood and anxiety disorders, all of these things we saw in these people who were fetuses when their mothers underwent that particular stressful thing, that Dutch hunger winter. Now, that makes sense because historically, the biggest chronic stressor that we have as human beings is famine. Okay, that's the biggest chronic stressor. Now, think cavemen, right? Think back, we were cavemen. Cavemen were us, right? They were still us. They had our brain, but they had some other things that we had we have that they don't have, and vice versa. And we had acute stressors during that time. We had, had to fight off a cave bear or a saber-toothed tiger or a dire wolf or something like that. But that's, that's just acute stress. 2 minutes later, either it's over or we're over. So we don't have to worry about that. But famine was something that was a chronic stressor. And what happened is that the body over time developed these ways to help us survive this famine, okay, to help us survive famine. which is to say, let me restate that if there have any evolutionary biologists with us today. Okay, those of us who had these adaptations survived, and those of us who didn't have them died. Okay, so all of us alive today at some point had these stressors in our line, right? In our forebears had these changes in the system. So what happened is that, like I said, famine was the biggest stressor that we had. And once we started to get chronically stressed, that would affect different parts of the body. Okay. So one of the things that happens is that, like I said, those hormones start to kick off, and we have that chronic stress, that adrenocorticotropic hormone, which kicks off the cortisol. Of course, cortisol is, we know, is the stress hormone, right? That causes stress. It also causes fat, right? That's stress. That's what cortisol does, causes us to gain weight, right? And the reason it causes us to gain weight is that's a protective mechanism against the famine. So our body is trying to save us, but it's trying to save us as cavemen, and we're a long way from cavemen, right? In the developed world today, we don't have to worry too much about starvation, okay, in the developed world. We may be eating bugs before too long, but right now, if I want a steak, I can go out and get one. So we have that going on. We have that stress that is all around us, not from cave bears now, but from traffic, right? That I have to go through to get to work and get home and what have you if I go out. So I have that all the time. The body thinks that it's still, in a caveman, it's still a caveman, it's in caveman mode. So what it does is kicks off those hormones, and we start gaining weight. Okay. So stress not only makes you stupid, but it wants to make you fat as well. It wants to make us fat and stupid, right? So, and you'll remember during COVID-19, right? People talked about that COVID-10, which became the COVID-20, which, may have gone even further. And they sort of attributed that at first to, well, people were at home, and so they were snacking and all of this. May have had more to do with the stress that was going on than anything else, because the stress, chronic stress, also affects those cognitive executive functions in the brain, which make us want to eat, and they make us want to eat compulsively. Okay. And when that happens, we don't want to eat things that are good for us. Okay. We don't want to eat leafy greens. Okay. When we're in this stressed state, we want comfort food, right? We want chicken and dumplings. We want chicken fried steak. We want bacon. Okay. So when we get stressed with this chronic stress, we want to eat compulsively, and we want to eat things that make us fat, because it's trying to save our lives from this famine, which doesn't exist, but we have, the body hasn't quite adapted yet. So we want to eat bad things, and we want to eat lots of it. And not only that, but also we don't want to exercise. It affects the motivation. The cognitive executive function has to do with initiating behaviors and what have you. So it affects our motivation. We don't want to work out. Why would we want to work out? If we're trying to put on fat, we just burn it off. So once again, the body works these things out. And so it makes us not want to work out. And it also disrupts the sleep cycle. And like I said, the sleep cycle is so very important. That really kicks off the stress that is going on, because if we don't get proper sleep, then that causes us to be even more stressed, and that's just a bad cycle, right? It's a negative cycle that we start to get in. But that's what this does, right? That's what this chronic stress, especially this cumulative stress, does, is that it causes all these things to happen. And so we have to be particularly attentive to that. Now, it causes other things as well physiologically. It affects the autoimmune system in the body. So inflammation, things like this, right? We know that stress will affect those sorts of things. We know that stress affects the gut microbiome, and this is so very important as well. We've known for a while now that there's a relationship between the gut and the brain, right? That's not a big jump, okay? Because remember, when we were developing, we were just one mass of cells. We developed into one, became the brain and the central nervous system. The other became the gut and the enteric nervous system. And those are still connected by what's called the gut-brain axis, okay? The gut is really a second brain. It has enough connections there to be considered a second brain. And it makes sense because it's sort of part of the brain, right? Deals with different things. And also about 90% of the serotonin in the body, serotonin is one of those, serotonin is interesting. It's sort of acts as a neurotransmitter and a hormone, depending on what it's doing. But it's one of those things that 90% of that is in the gut. Okay, 10% is in the brain. So that's very important in helping us reduce stress as well. If you've ever been stressed or even depressed or these sorts of things, then you probably received an SSRI, right? A selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which puts more serotonin in the system, which helps me to deal with the symptoms of the depression. So serotonin is good. And what happens is when we get stressed, then that causes serotonin to be produced in the body. Well, stress interferes with that. Okay. Stress suppresses that. So that's a problem that we have. Okay. Is that gut microbiome is affected by stress. And the relationship between the gut and the brain is now we recognize at such a point is bad gut health is probably bad mental health. Okay. So if you've got stuff going on with the gut that's really bad, you've probably got some other issues as well that are going on that need to be attended to as well. And good gut health tends to be more good mental health. So that's the relationship on those is very, and the more we study it, the closer that relationship gets. And like I said, sort of makes sense if you think about the development process and what have you. Okay. We also know that things like we used to think that stress was a direct cause of something like gastric ulcers, right? In fact, you could go into a doctor's office, used to be, they had a poster on the wall, it had a line directly from the brain to the gut, right? So it had the brain to the gut, and they said, well, this is the cause of gastric ulcers. Well, then we found out that gastric ulcers are not caused directly by stress. They're caused by a bacteria, right? That Helicobacter pylori. H. pylori is the bacteria that's in the gut. That's what causes gastric ulcers. And if you think you have ulcers, the gastric ulcer, then go to your doctor. Your doctor will take a sample and send it off, and it comes back with H. pylori. Then he'll just give you a pill, and that'll take care of that, right? Amazing how far we've come, right? But what we noticed is that about 3/4 of the people on the planet have H. pylori in the gut, but 3/4 of the people on the planet do not have gastric ulcers. So we had to say, well, what's going on? And what we found is that stress was the culprit once again, that when we get stressed, that suppresses the immune system, that causes the immune system to come down, and that allows that bacteria to flourish and start to eat the gut lining out. Okay. So stress and ulcers, yes, but not in a direct way. And stress very rarely works in a direct way. Okay. It's usually the beginning of something. It's the cause of something that you have an effect on down the road. So those gastric ulcers, we saw that what they did was they affect the immune system. The immune system goes down, and then that bacteria in the gut is allowed to go crazy in there. We also see this in things, lots of good studies on this as well. And we see this in college, okay, in university, right? And the reason we see it there is because it's a convenient study sample, right, if you're going to do research, but also because there are a couple of different times during the year when we know that students are under a lot of stress, and that is midterms and finals, okay? And what we see is that during those times of intense stress, that's when colds start to, the amount of colds goes up, flu goes up, these sorts of things, all of this sort of thing increases because as they become stressed, that decreases the immune system and allows those viruses and bacteria and things to then flourish in the body. So especially, if you have to take care of somebody at home, right? If you're one of those people who have to take care of somebody at home, you're under constant stress from that sort of thing. So taking care of your own health, because if you don't take care of your own, right, you're not gonna be able to take care of anybody else. But that becomes especially important because of the stress you're under, you're going to be more at risk of viruses, infections, things like this, even inflammation, like we said. So all of these things are what happen. Remember also that as those cognitive executive functions in the brain are affected, we start to eat more, we start to put on weight. We start to put on weight around the middle generally, okay? And that's a bad place for it. Now, don't ask me what a good place for it is because I don't know. But I know that around the gut is especially bad because the fat around the gut creates its own set of hormones, which are also not good for us, okay? So not only do we have are we fighting other things, but that fat around the gut is causing the body to produce other hormones, which are not good for us. So we develop that fat around the middle. That leads to coronary disease. And what is the number one killer in our society today? Coronary disease, right? So we have that stress that causes that coronary disease. Not only do we have ischemic heart disease, but peripheral artery disease as well through that obesity. Okay. We know that stress does other things. Like I said, we looked at it, how it decreases our self-regulation, and we saw quite a bit of that during COVID-19 once again. And I use that just as because we've all lived through it, right? We've all been through it. We're all on the other side of it, so we know how stressful everything was during that time. But these are the things that we see, right? These are the things that we see happening. And these are just a few of the things, right? I just picked a few of them that you might not remember, okay? We all know other ways that stress can cause problems in our lives, okay? Stress causes problems in our relationships, right? I'm more apt to snap at people when I'm stressed, right? Road rage is pretty much a direct result of stress. So all of these other ways as well, that cumulative stress that chronic stress piled on top of chronic stress, how that causes problems in our life. But I just wanted to throw these out just to remind you. Makes us fat, it makes us stupid. Okay. So we don't want that. We want to try to, and we're under when we're trying to fight nature, right? We're trying to fight Mother Nature, who gave us this ability to survive famines, right? So what it did was, we developed this ability to survive these hard times. And when we're trying to fight that, it's sort of an uphill battle, right? Because it's hard to fight Mother Nature. But there are ways that we can do it. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So we're going to talk about some self-care. Okay. Now, these are things you're going to hear regularly, but now you know why you hear it. Okay. So one of the things is we want to maintain a healthy diet, right? We say, well, yeah, of course I want to maintain a healthy diet. But remember, with this chronic stress, this cumulative stress, we're fighting Mother Nature, who wants to make us fat, who wants to make us eat bad things. I don't want to eat avocado toast, right? I don't want to eat a healthy fat. I want to eat bacon. Okay. I want some pork belly. Okay. So we want to eat those sorts of things. So maintaining that healthy diet is very important, not just because I don't want to, maybe take on some other things, but if I'm more stressed I'm going to start wanting to eat those bad. I'm going to start eating more comfort food, right? There's a reason it's called comfort food, right? We eat that fat and stuff in there and salt and what have you, and it makes us feel good, right? It makes us feel good because we think that it's helping us to survive. In actuality, it's now killing us. So maintaining a healthy diet, very important. Getting quality sleep, once again, okay? I can't tell you how important sleep is. Probably the best investment, if you're going to spend money on health, then the best investment you can make is to buy one of those eye patches, right? Those eye pads that go over your eyes that you put on at night when you sleep, right? Some of them have some lavender scent in them, so you sort of get a nice lavender relaxing smell as you do. But we know that sleep is so very important, and any amount of light that is there is going to disrupt some of the sleep function. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to go to sleep. It doesn't mean that I'm not even going to get some good REM sleep. Okay. I know that because, I fall asleep by laying on the couch reading or something, and wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with the light on. And, did I sleep? Yes. Did I have some dream sleep? Yes. But I know that there were other things going on. That light, just the amount of light, if you turn on the light in your bathroom, close the door, the amount of light coming underneath the door in your bathroom is enough to disrupt that sleep cycle. It's enough to disrupt the actions of melatonin. which is another hormone in the body, right? So that melatonin, we typically think it causes us to sleep, which it does, but it also has other functions in the brain. Okay, so once we're asleep, it also does other things in the brain, and that's what's disrupted. We'll go to sleep, okay, and we'll have REM sleep, but there are other functions that are going to be disrupted because of that light. So iPad, right? One of those eye patches that goes eye mask. That's what it's called. I was trying to think of the word eye mask that goes on that I can wear at night. Okay, it doesn't hinder my hearing. Okay, I can still hear everything that's going on. Just if I need to, I can just flip it up and see whatever's going on. But that's money well spent. We know that engaging in positive social interactions helps to reduce stress. And once again, what happened during COVID-19, right? To stay away from everybody, right? Don't go around anybody. Okay. It just caused more stress. Okay. We became more and more stressed because of this. So positive social interactions with, family, friends, people I care about are very important in reducing stress. I want to spend time in a positive environment. If your family's not positive, don't spend time around them, right? I want to spend time with other people who I do find to be positive. But also try to spend some time in green space. Okay. We know that getting outside, seeing outside, breathing that air, that's better than being locked up inside all the time. If I can get out, do that. And then engage in regular physical exercise. Once again, it's not because I necessarily want to maintain my beautiful figure, whatever that may be. That'd be great. But it's because that stress that I'm constantly under is trying to make me fat. Okay. It's trying to make me fat so I can survive a famine that doesn't actually exist. So if it was a famine, I just, that fat would, the body would eat itself and, I'd go back down to being slim. I wouldn't have to worry about it. But we don't have that now. So we always hear about, well, maintain a healthy diet, get good sleep, exercise regularly. Okay, yeah. Why do we need those? Because we're fighting against Mother Nature. That's why we have to be aware of those, and we have to make an effort to do those. Now, we know that stress on the job can be mediated by increasing decision latitude in the workplace. So the more decision latitude I have, then the better off it is. This is why people at the top of the hierarchy in the workplace have less stress than the people at the bottom of the hierarchy. Let me say that again. The people at the bottom of the hierarchy have more stress than the people at the top of the hierarchy. Okay. And we know this once again. We have studies with thousands and thousands of people, longitudinal studies that go over decades of time. We have human studies, we have mammalian studies, we have primate studies, we have all kinds of studies that show that this is the truth. Okay. Now, if I'm at the bottom, I may not want the same stress as the person at the top, right? I'm stressed, so I want to handle this. But let me tell you, the person at the top has less stress than you. Okay. Because part of that is because they have more decision latitude. If they're having a bad day, they can decide, you know what? I'm not going to deal with this today. I'm just going to go home and I'll deal with it tomorrow, or I'll deal with it later tonight or something. I'm going to go home and, have an early dinner or take my wife out, whatever it happens to be. But if I'm at the bottom, I don't have that choice. I can't just tell my boss, you know what? I think I'm going to go home, take care of this. I'll come back and do it tomorrow, right? Very rarely do we have that decision latitude. Now, that's the reason that people at the top have less stress, is they have more decision latitude. And so what we want to do is we want to figure out ways, how can I do this? How can I get more decision latitude in my job, whatever it happens to be? And that doesn't have to be real decision latitude. It can be perceived control. Okay. We know that when we increase perceived control, that not only moderates the health effects of traumatic stressors, but it also moderates the effects of socioeconomic status. Okay. And other chronic and cumulative stressors. So I think one of the best examples of this, people say, well, what does that mean? Well, one of the best examples of this is that saying that my home is my castle. Okay. Yeah, I go to work and I may be the low guy on the totem pole, but everybody has to go to work. And, there's a lot of other people in the same space as me. But when I come home, this is my castle. Okay. I make the decisions here. I decide what goes on. That gives me, I have control over my surroundings at that point. That's just a sort of, that's a way that we reduce stress. I come home, I reduce that stress just by looking at it, thinking about things in that way. So that's one of the things that we can do there. Having a greater sense of purpose in life, we know that also reduces stress. So ikigai means reason for being. Okay, it's a Japanese term. It means reason for being. And there's a little test. I put a link there for you. You can click on that and go to that and take that test. And it looks at many different things. We'll talk more about it tomorrow, but also just today, if you want to take a look at it, that helps me figure out what my purpose in life is. Okay. And that may have changed, right? I may be retired now and, or what have you. I may be doing something that, I've been doing all my life and now I don't enjoy it much anymore. So what am I going to do? So maybe I need a new purpose in life. And this sort of helps me figure that out. So that sense of purpose reduces stress and helps me develop resiliency, which we'll talk more about tomorrow. Some of the other practices that you can do, and most of these do not take a lot of time, okay? 2 minutes a day for most of these. Now, physical exercise is 10 minutes a day, okay? But you don't have to do an hour of it. 10 minutes a day, you can see positive benefits if you do physical exercise. But these also, 2 minutes a day for most of these is enough to see some positive benefit. Now, if you do them longer, you're going to get more benefit. But so this isn't something that I want to do, 2 times a week. Okay. This is something that I want to do on a daily basis. Remember what I said about that cumulative stress model. If I'm waiting until sometime during the week to do this, I've got all this stress already built up, and then I'm going to have stress piled on top of that. So, I'm just going to be trying to keep my head above water at that point. But 2 minutes a day is not a whole lot of time to spend on stress management, but it's something I can do every day. Consistency is more important than consistency. 2 minutes a day is better than an hour twice a week. Okay. So consistency is very important. Guided imagery, okay, is one of those practices that helps reduce stress. Go to YouTube, okay, type in guided imagery. You're going to get hundreds, if not thousands, of videos on there that will take you through these guided imagery exercises to help you reduce stress. Now, a lot of them are, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour and 45 minutes long, whatever. You don't have to do the whole thing. Just do 2 minutes of it, okay? Or however much time you have, right? Once again, the more you do it, the more effect it'll have. But guided imagery, just type that in, find one that you like. There are enough of them on there. You got to be able to find one on there that you like somewhere and go through that. Progressive muscle relaxation is the same thing, okay? YouTube is your stress management friend, okay? Go to YouTube, type in progressive muscle relaxation, find one of those videos. Oftentimes, the progressive muscle relaxation will be combined with the guided imagery. That may be what you're using to do the progressive muscle relaxation. So these things can work together, and you're doing those for just a short amount of time a day, but it's going to have an effect on you to help reduce that stress. The diaphragmatic breathing, that's always my first go-to when I'm working with somebody to reduce stress. And we'll talk more about why in just a minute. We're going to practice some of that. The relaxation response. This was created by Benson during in the 70s. In the late 1900s, Benson created this. So that's what kids today are calling that, right? I don't know. It makes me feel old. I don't know about you. But in the late 1900s, Benson in the 1970s created this relaxation response. This is a scripted performance. So there's a link for you right there. You can go to that and just follow the script. Okay. Doesn't take very long, maybe, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. Doesn't take very long at all to do this. The autogenic training, we know that helps bust stress. You'll notice from the link that I gave you to that the VA still uses this, okay, because it is effective. The only thing about autogenic training is it's going to take you a little longer, okay? Because what you're doing in the autogenic training is you're saying, something like, my left hand is warm, my left hand is warm, my left hand is warm, my left arm is warm. And you're sort of doing that for the entire body. So it's going to take a little time. It's going to take a little more than 2 minutes to go through, but it is effective. And once again, it's sort of a script. So just follow the script that the link will take you to. Mindfulness-based stress reduction. Any sort of mindfulness is going to be helpful for you. Okay. And 2 minutes a day is all you're going to need. Now, mindfulness-based stress reduction is part of the EBP because that's what all the research is on. MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, is a system. Okay, so the people, and when I'm doing research on something, I want the people in Austin doing it the same way as the people in Anchorage. Okay, that gives me reliability and validity in my studies. Okay, I want everybody doing it the same way, so I can look at that and then compare what's going on. Validity is what it gives me. But anyway, MBSR, because it's a system, I know the people in one place are doing it the same way as the people in another place. That's why it's used as a model of research. But if you do MBSR, you're going to do 45 minutes of it, okay? Because that's the system, okay? Now, there's nothing magical about that 45 minutes. That's just what John Kabat-Zinn, he's the guy who created this system. That's what he was using in his personal practice when he introduced this into the medical community in Boston. But we know from other studies that there's no magic, 45 is not a magic number. 2 minutes and you'll see positive effects in your life. Okay. Transcendental meditation, sort of the same thing as MBSR. Transcendental meditation, everybody who does it the same way. Okay. So if, once again, people in Houston are doing it the same way as people in Hawaii. Okay. Excuse me. So that's the reason that's studied. Most types of meditation will be beneficial for you, right? Generally, we talk about mindfulness meditation. That's just sort of mindfulness. But most types of meditation will be beneficial for you. Cognitive behavioral therapy of choice these days. We'll talk much more about that tomorrow in the compassion fatigue part of this. Okay. Today, we sort of get the behavioral part. Tomorrow, we'll look at the cognitive part, which some people find more boring, but is just as important. Biofeedback is another thing we can use. The one that I use is called Heart Math. And there are many of them out there. You can look them up and find them. I like the Heart Math one myself. Has a little thing a little device you can hold, sort of clips on your ear, so it gets your heartbeat and what have you. And you can look at that. It has lights on it and stuff. It has it on your phone as well. You can have an app for it on your phone, or you can plug it into your computer. And that's the reason I like it. It has some games on there. It has one game that as you relax, then a picture begins to develop on your screen. As your heartbeat goes down, you have this picture to develop. There's a little mountain over here, a little deer over here, a little bunny over there. And then it'll start to color those things in. And if you're doing it and you start to get more stress, then those pictures will start to disappear. So when I worked in the psychiatric hospital, I spent some time on the adolescent boys unit. And adolescent boys are full of energy, as you might expect, and conflict in young men. And so I thought, this would be great if we had two computers and had two guys who were really going at it, say, okay, we're going to have a contest, and whoever can create the picture first wins the contest. So you sort of got them, going at each other. So you have that conflictual aspect of it. But at the same time, in order to win the contest, they have to relax, right? So, I presented that up, and they thought it was a great idea, but I never got my computers for it. So anyway, but it's wonderful for yourself. Okay, you can use that. That's the reason I like that. But there are other, like I said, biofeedback tools out there that you can use. EFT, emotional freedom techniques, the tapping stuff is very effective. I found that very effective in my private practice. I'm going to practice some of that today. And this EFT works for just about everything. Not only, don't think just emotions, anxiety, depression, things like this. It does work for those. It also works for things like pain. Okay. Use it quite a bit in pain management as well. Self-expression through drawing, words, and movement. The references there are from Jim Gordon's stuff. Jim Gordon, some of you may be familiar with him. He's the director for the Center of Mind-Body Medicine in New York. He goes around the world where places where there's conflict, okay, where people are under a lot of stress, a lot of trauma in their life. That's where he goes and he works. He's been in Kosovo. He's been in Gaza. And I used to say that it was Yeah, I meant the 70s, right? He was there in the 70s, the 80s, in Gaza there. He's probably there again. I don't know. He's probably has people over there right now. But Ukraine, I'm sure, he has people in Ukraine. He's also had people in Texas and Santa Fe. We had shooting in Santa Fe, the shooting in Uvalde. He's been to Uvalde a couple of times, and I've talked to the people down there, and they really enjoy what he does. But part of this is what he uses, this drawing words and movement. And one of the exercises that he has is called shaking and dancing. And you can find that in his book. I think it's his latest book. He comes out with a lot of them, but the last one I have, it's called The Transformation. James Gordon, The Transformation, and it's about trauma. Okay, and his point is that we all experience trauma in our lives at some point. Okay, so everybody can use this. Okay, all this cumulative stress that we have can be traumatic. Okay, so the trauma, but that exercise, that shaking and dancing exercises in there, really encourage you to use that. That's another one. We can't really do it today, but I mean, just we're just online. But I encourage people to use that all the time. So three things that are my go-to are really the diaphragmatic breathing, the EFT, and the shaking and dancing. And you can go to YouTube and you can punch that Jim Gordon shaking and dancing, and you'll see him do that with a group of people. And there are other ones on there as well that you can use for your personal exercises. It doesn't just have a lot of people. It's just one person and they're going through, has some nice music and things like that. But anyway, so that's something else. Okay. Now let's get to the practical part of this. Let's get to the practice. And what we're going to do is we're going to first do diaphragmatic breathing. Now, I know some of you have to be familiar with diaphragmatic breathing. And breathing is something we do all the time, but we don't tend to do diaphragmatic breathing. We get out of that as we're adults. If you watch children, they do breathe diaphragmatically. And then that's something that we just lose as we get older. Instead of breathing through our stomach, we start to breathe through our chest. So instead of inhaling and pushing our abdomen out, we put all the air up in the chest. That's not good for a couple of reasons. One reason is that it doesn't let the diaphragm go anywhere. The diaphragm is going to be very important to us here in a second. But it also doesn't get the lungs filled up with air. It fills up the upper lobes of the lungs, but it doesn't fill up the lower lobes of the lungs. So we're not getting enough air. And the more oxygen we have in the system, the more relaxed the body becomes. Okay. So oxygen in the system causes muscles to relax. One of the things we talk about often is, if I want to relax, say my shoulders, right? If I carry tension in my shoulders, I want to relax there. So I think about my shoulders, right? Well, blood goes where the mind goes. Okay. So we know that concentrating on a specific point in the body moves blood flow to that area. Well, blood carries oxygen. Okay. So the more oxygen I have in that point, then the more relaxed those muscles are going to become. So we want to, as we begin this diaphragmatic breathing, sort of focus on the lower abdomen. Okay. Just about 2 inches below the navel there in the center of the body. Okay. That's the point we sort of want to focus on there. And we want to focus on that because it gets the mind away from the chest. The chest is where all the panic receptors are in the body. So if I start breathing like this, I mean, I can make myself panic. I don't have to be panicked before. I can make myself panicked if I'm breathing like that because that sets those panic receptors off. So one way to do that is just take one of the hands and just sort of slap that, right below the belly button there, just sort of slap that, sort of pull the brain down there. And then we want to breathe. We want to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. Now, if you have something wrong with the nose that you can't breathe through the nose, that's fine. Breathe through the mouth. Okay. But otherwise, breathe through the nose on the inhale and breathe through the mouth on the exhale. And the reason we want to breathe through the nose if we can is because the air coming in through the nose tends to be moister. And so we get more oxygen absorption when we breathe through the nose than if we breathe through the mouth. Okay. So we want to breathe in through the nose for a count of 4. We want to hold it for a count of 4, and we're going to breathe out through the mouth for a count of 8. Okay. Now, some of you may have heard of squared breathing, which is in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. So you're sort of going to square, right? In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Okay. The reason we double that on our method, reason in for 4, out for 4, in for 4, out for 8, is because when the exhale is longer than the inhale, that tells the brain that everything is okay. Okay. So that's just a way we exhale longer than we inhale. That slows the heartbeat down. Okay. Tells the body's okay. That slows the heartbeat down, helps us to relax. Now, we're going to practice this here in a minute. So when we practice this, do it on your count. Okay. I have people sometimes will practice the breathing and they say, I can't make it all the way to 8 when I'm exhaling. I run out of air before I get to 8. And I have to remind them, you're in control of your breathing. Just count faster. Okay. That's fine. But in for 4, hold for 4, out for 8. Now, the reason we're doing this, you'll notice our little breathing bunny here. As we inhale, you push the abdomen out. And then as you exhale, you just let it fall back down in. Now, the reason that we do that is as we push that abdomen out, that creates a vacuum in the body, which pulls that diaphragm. That diaphragm is that sort of muscular part that separates the organs in the upper body from the organs in the lower body. Let me lower this a little bit. Organs in the lower body. And what happens is as we push that abdomen out, the diaphragm is pulled down. As we exhale and relax, the diaphragm goes back up. So we're moving the diaphragm just like this. Now, the reason that's important is because the diaphragm goes right beside the vagus nerve. Okay, the vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve, runs out of the brain, wanders throughout the body, connects most all the major organs in the body together. And as we stimulate that vagus nerve, it causes the release of serotonin, melatonin, and endorphins in the body. Okay, so we produce those ourselves because we have receptors for them in our body and our brain, right? So we have to produce them ourselves. So that's the way we produce those. One way we produce those, okay, is stimulate that vagus nerve, and that causes the release of those neurotransmitters and hormones, which help us to relax. And the vagus nerve, like I said, sits right beside the diaphragm. So as I move that diaphragm up and down, that stimulates the vagus nerve and causes that the release of those neurotransmitters and hormones. So that's the reason we do it that way. If I'm breathing through my chest up here, my diaphragm isn't really going anywhere. Okay, my body's moving up, but my diaphragm is just sort of staying right where it is, so I don't get that action. Now, there are other ways to stimulate the vagus nerve. I can stick my face in a bucket of cold water. That'll do it. Okay, not really convenient. Okay, I find myself out someplace, right? Not really convenient at home. Okay, I don't keep an bucket of ice water around to stick my head in. Okay, there are some other things you can do. You can stimulate within the ear, or it sort of runs down the neck. Right here is where that vagus nerve comes out. In fact, the FDA has approved sort of stimulator. It's a stimulator you put on your neck right there that stimulates the vagus nerve. They've approved it for treatment of depression, because once again, what am I going to do for depression? If you go to the doctor, he's going to give you an SSRI, right, to increase serotonin in your system. But we can also increase serotonin in our system through stimulating the vagus nerve in other ways. So FDA, that's one of the ways they're doing it now. Instead of medication, using that stimulators stimulate the vagus nerve, cause the release of that serotonin. We're doing it not there, but we're doing it here at the diaphragm. Okay, so we can breathe. We're always breathing, right? So we can breathe wherever we go. We can use this sort of breathing. So I want to practice it right now. So go ahead and put that hand on the lower abdomen. Okay, and breathe in through the nose for a count of 4. Push that abdomen out. Hold it for a count of 4. And then exhale through the mouth for a count of 8. And again, in for 4. Hold for 4. And out for 8. One more time, in for 4. Hold for 4. And out for 8. Okay, very good. Now, a couple of things. One thing is some people say, well, I have a hard time, when I'm inhaling, I want to pull my abdomen in instead of pushing it out. So what can I do there? Well, one thing you can do is as just imagine that there's a balloon down there where your hand is, right below that, right below your belly button there. Just imagine there's a balloon there, and as you inhale, just see that balloon inflate. Okay, so the air goes directly in through the nose, right to that balloon, and the balloon starts to inflate. That pushes that abdomen out. Okay, so and then as you exhale through the mouth, just imagine that balloon getting smaller. So just imagine a balloon down there that you're working with. So and just follow the breathing bunny that's there, right? So that can help you do that. Now, there's a couple of hacks that we can use for this as well. One of them you heard me use as we were doing this, and that's an auditory trigger. Okay. So, what that is that on that exhale, that I'm using that heavy breath. Okay. So, I'm using that so I can hear myself doing that breathing, right? What I'm doing is just some classical conditioning. Okay. The classical conditioning, just sort of think of Pavlov and his dogs, right? Ring the bell, the dog slobbers. Okay. Well, what we're doing is we're creating a trigger whereby when I hear myself, maybe I sigh, right? I get stressed out and but once I hear that, then that will automatically begin to cause the release of those serotonin, melatonin, and endorphins in the body. Remember, serotonin, those are your Prozac type drugs. Melatonin, that's your Ambien type drugs. Uh, Endorphins, those are your morphine type drugs that we have. So all designed to chill us out, has some other functions as well, but help us to relax really well. So using that heavy breath and acts as a trigger to set off that. Now, if you're going to use that, you got to use it all the time, right? So you're conditioning yourself. Okay, so you got to use it all the time. Another one is a tactile trigger. Okay, and that is just choose a finger, right? It might be your forefinger, it might be your middle finger, whatever. Whichever one you pick, stick with it, use it. But what happens is how you use this is as you inhale, bring the thumb and the finger together. I'm using my forefinger on this. Bring the thumb and the forefinger together. As you hold the breath, slightly press them together. And then as you exhale, just let them open back up. Now, you're not going to be holding it up like this. It'll be down in your lap or by your side or wherever, just for demonstration purposes, right? So as you're holding it like this, and then it opens back up. Once you do that move, once again, that acts as a trigger that causes the release of those serotonin, melatonin, and endorphins. Okay. So those neurotransmitters and hormones, we're creating a trigger that we can use to do that. So, I've had clients in the past who said, I found myself in the grocery store and I was like, because I was so upset with the line and people in line and what have you. Okay, well, that's great, but that may not always be convenient, right? Maybe in a situation where that may seem aggressive or something like that. So, but I can always hold my hand at my side and just do that, and nobody knows what's going on, right? Just touching one of the fingers. I'm not making a fist, right? That may seem a little aggressive, but just touching one of those fingers, whichever one you choose to create that trigger with. And that helps me. Okay. So you can use those triggers. You can practice both of them at the same time or none of them. It doesn't make any difference. It's just an easier way to do that. Now, what we're going to do right now is I'm going to get on my phone here. I'm trying to anyway. And we're going to do 2 minutes of this breathing. Remember what I said? 2 minutes is all it takes is to make positive effect. You have 2 minutes. So we're going to do 2 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing. And if you think that 2 minutes is a long time after we got through with this, you say, well, that seemed much longer than 2 minutes, then you might have a stress problem. Okay. You might have a problem with stress in your life. So what we want to do is we want to do this. Now, don't do this if you're driving or operating heavy machinery or something like that. Some people listen to this while they're driving. Don't do that. But if you're at home, if you're at a place where you can do this, then practice it along with us. We're going to do 2 minutes, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 8. Remember, you do those faster as slow as comfortable for you. Okay. And let's go ahead and begin right now. So in for 4, hold for 4, and out for 8. and just continue. Okay. All right. That's 2 minutes right there. So if you thought that was a long time, then might have some problem stress, right? And need to get doing, need to get moving, need to get doing things. Okay. So if you thought it was, oh, well, that seemed about right. Okay. Or it didn't seem even 2 minutes. That's great. Okay. That's great. All right. So that's the diaphragmatic breathing. Once again, 2 minutes of that a day. And you're going to see some positive effect. If you can do it longer than that, then do it longer. You know, you can do it 10, 15 minutes a day, then I encourage you to do that, but at least 2 minutes a day. Now, the next thing we're going to practice is this EFT, this emotional freedom techniques. Like I said, it can help with stress, especially, and that's what we're going to use it for today, but it also helps for many other things called emotional freedom techniques. So it helps with things like anxiety, depression. I've used that in private practice before. I use it a lot in private practice for pain management. It works particularly well for that. Generally, I can cut pain in half after one session with the EFT. So you know that's not every time, okay, but as a general thing, somebody comes to see me for pain management. Somebody comes to see me for shingles, for example, and say, okay, where are you on scale 0 to 10 on pain scale? They say I'm at an 8 right now, and we'll go through one round of this EFT and say, okay, where are you right now? And I'm at a 4, right? So, and that's fairly, like I said, that's fairly consistent that whatever the pain is, whether it's chronic or whether it's acute, that we can get that cut in half just after one session. And the more they practice it, the better they get at it. Remember, these are skills. The more I practice them, the better I get at them. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to tap. This is called tapping. We're going to tap different points in the body. The points that we're going to be tapping are acupuncture points. We've studied acupuncture in this country since at least the 1960s. We have a wide body. There's a reason this is part of the evidence-based practice. We have a wide body of research on this. So we know that as we activate these points, that helps the body to relax. Okay, so we're going to be tapping several of them. When we tap, what you want to do is you want to, if you can, use your fingertips. Some people have very, very long fingernails, but what you want, you may use your knuckle or something like that if you have to. But what you want to do is you want to hit them hard enough to activate the points. Now, you don't want to bruise yourself, okay? You want to hit them that hard, but you can't. I've seen people who just barely touch them, and you know what? That's not going to activate that point, okay? So we want to tap those a little harder, just tap them firmly, okay, with the fingertips, because like I said, fingertips also contain acupuncture points in them. So that helps us relax even more if we can do that. And as we tap these certain points, we're going to tap them in a certain order. And there's a little saying that goes along with this, little affirmation that says, even though I have this problem with blank. And today we're just going to use stress. Now, if you're using it in your personal life, try to be as specific as you can. Okay. So even though I have this problem with being stressed out by having to take care of my parents or whatever it happens to be, or having to deal with Bob at work or whatever it is that's causing my stress, right? Try to identify a stressor. So even though I have this problem with stress, I'm just going to do it generally for everybody. I deeply and completely accept myself. Now, you need to say that second part. Okay. Now, I've had clients in private practice who, after a year of doing the tapping, got around to telling me, I've just now been able to say I deeply and completely accept myself. It's like, well, if you'd have told me that a year ago, told me you were having a problem with it, we'd be further along in the therapy. But anyway, say that. Okay. If you're at home, if you're alone, if you're by yourself, say this out loud. Okay. Because we know that hearing myself say something is more effective than just thinking it. Okay. So follow along with me as we go through this. We're going to go through 3 rounds. The first time we're going to do the whole affirmation, even though I have this problem with stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. The second round, we're going to focus just on the problem, okay, the stress that I have in my life. And then the third round, I deeply and completely accept myself. Okay. So if you're stressed right now, you may just measure that and say, where are you on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being no stress at all, 10 being most stressed I've ever been in my life. We want to always measure before we do anything, and then after we do it, so we can tell our progress. It's a form of biofeedback, right? That we're doing sort of on our own here. Okay, so let's begin this. We're going to tap. The first point is that karate chop, called the karate chop point. You'll see it on the hand right there. It's just right in front of that little bone, just right on the edge of the hand. I want to tap that, and I'm going to say, even though I have this problem with stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. Okay. Then we're going to move to the other hand. Now, some people, if you watch this on YouTube, and you can find Gary Craig is on it. Gary Craig is the founder of EFT. He's on YouTube. You can find him doing this. You'll see that they do one side of the body, and that's fine if you want to do one side, but those acupuncture points are on both sides of the body, okay, unless they're in the center, right, on the center line. So we're going to do both sides. Even though I have this problem with stress in my life, I deeply and completely accept myself. Next one is the top of the head. Even though I have this problem with stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. Next one is the eyebrow. If you can see, it's on the inside of that eyebrow right there. Okay, so you have the whole eyebrow sort of comes across right there. I sort of just cut my hands over it and do the whole thing, but hit that point. Even though I have this problem with stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. Then we're going to do the corner of the eye, and it's not the temple so much as it is the corner of the eye on that ocular bone right there. Even though I have this problem with stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. Below the eye, even though I have this problem with stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. Below the nose, that's what's on the center there. Even though I have this problem with stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. Another one on the center line is the point of the chin. Even though I have this problem with stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. Collarbone, you have one on both sides there. Even though I have this problem with stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. Then you have the ribs. So some people reach across and sort of hug themselves when they do that, or you can do here. It doesn't matter whether you're far back or you're up close. It's the level of it, because those points, it sits right at the bottom of a bra strap. Okay, so that gives you some idea where it is. Those points go all the way around the body. So it doesn't make any difference whether you're more to the side or more to the front. It doesn't make any difference, but hit the ribs. And as you do those, even though I have this problem with stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. And then back up to the top of the sternum there. Even though I have this problem with stress, I deeply and completely accept myself. Okay, very good. Round 2, we're going to focus just on the problem, just on the stress. Same points. Once again, tap that karate chop point. The stress I have in my life. Other hand, is stress that I'm experiencing in my life right now. Top of the head, the stress I have. Eyebrows, the stress that I have in my life. Corners of the eyes, the stress that I'm experiencing in my life. below the eyes, the stress that I have in my life, below the nose, the stress that I have in my life, point of the chin, the stress that I'm experiencing in my life, collarbone, the stress that I have in my life, ribs, the stress that I have in my life right now, top of the sternum, once again, the stress that I'm experiencing in my life right now. Okay, that's round two. And then the final one, we focus just on that affirmation. So tapping those same points once again. I deeply and completely accept myself. Other hand, I deeply and completely accept myself. Top of the head, I deeply and completely accept myself. Eyebrows, I deeply and completely accept myself. Corners of the eyes, I deeply and completely accept myself. Below the eyes, I deeply and completely accept myself. Below the nose, I deeply and completely accept myself. Point of the chin, I deeply and completely accept myself. Collarbone, what is that thing? I'm so relaxed, I forgot what it was called. I deeply and completely accept myself. Ribs, I deeply and completely accept myself. And then top of the sternum, I deeply and completely accept myself. Deep breath in and out. Okay. And that's all there is to the tapping. Now, it took us a little longer because I was explaining it as we went through, but it'll only take you 2 to 3 minutes to do that, to go through all 3 rounds of that. So 2 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing, 3 minutes of EFT tapping, 5 minutes a day is all that it takes to start inculcating some of this stress management into your daily life that'll have an effect on what you do. So I encourage you to use these things, encourage you to use the diaphragmatic breathing, encourage you to use the EFT tapping. Of course, my third one, like I said, is the shaking and dancing. If you look that up online, and you can find Dr. Gordon as he demonstrates that for you, or read his book, The Transformation. But that's what I have for you today. I'm going to stop sharing now and get back to here. If we have any questions, it looks like we got 5 in the Q&A.
While you're doing that,
I'll look those over while you do your
there
thing.
you go. I'm going to go over our for those of you that are joining us today for CEUs or certificates of attendance. We are offering both for license, but the CEUs are for licensed social workers and licensed professional counselors in the state of Texas. In order to qualify, well, first of all, if you have a different license in Texas or you have a license outside of Texas, feel free to go through the process and get the certificate. But please know, if you give it to the jurisdiction and they don't take it, I don't have any control over that. I've had people say that they've gotten theirs to take it. But once again, we're set up for the social workers and LPCs. Anyone can get a certificate of attendance. For today's webinar, it's worth 1.5 hours of CEU credits. You have to attend the entire webinar in order to qualify. You will have to also complete the Google survey. It should Zoom as you close out today. It should take you, give you the option to go take that survey. But if not, don't worry. There'll be a follow-up email that goes out to everyone that attended today. It'll go out in tomorrow's, I'll get an email tomorrow. And the link for Dr. Mottern's slides, plus the link for his handout, plus the link for the Google evaluation survey will be there as well. You need to finish that within the week, and then give me about 4 weeks after that, and we'll get the certificates out to you. Lots of compliments, Doctor.
Okay. Well, thank you. Like I said, pleasure to be here again. Just one more thing. if you have a question on the material, feel free to contact me. If you have a question on the CEUs or something, contact Marty, because I can't help you on that. I usually get somebody who does. I just
Yeah.
forward the email back to Marty again. But any questions on the material, would be more than happy to answer it. So we have one here that says when stress is you have those long-term effects. Can those long-term effects of stress be eliminated? Is it possible to go back to normal hippocampal structure, for example? Or is it once the harm is done, that's it? No, you can go back to the other way. I mean, the hippocampus will shrink if we're under that chronic stress, but it will go back to normal. The learning and memory will start to produce new neurons in the brain once that stress is gone. They won't be repressed, won't be suppressed, and so we'll start to do that. So once harm is done, no, we can make progress after that. Okay, so it's not once the harm is done. It's not like other things where I'm sort of thinking of Alzheimer's or something like that, right? Where the brain cells are gone and there's nothing we can do to bring those back. So this is something that we can do something about. What's that thing called again that attaches to your ear? That heart math. Okay, heart math is the name of that. There are other things out there. That's just the one that I use. Somebody likes the 448 better than the squared breathing 4 before. That's great. Neurological pain, but she can't tap on her own. It will help if someone taps for her. Yes, what we're doing is we're activating the acupuncture points in the body. I don't have to activate them myself. They can be activated by somewhere else. If you go for acupuncture, for example, or acupressure, if you go for a treatment, somebody else is doing that for you. Okay, you're not doing that necessarily yourself. I would suggest that they're the ones doing the affirmation, though, right? Just because I say the affirmation doesn't mean it's going to help you. But yes, you can stimulate those points for someone else. Like I said, just like you go to an acupuncturist, they're the ones doing that, or an acupressurist, they're the ones doing that. So you can do that for other people as long as they're following along with the affirmations that we use. Okay, I think that's all that's in the Q&A.
Outstanding stuff, as always. And I think you'll see that in the chat. It's very, very impressive. I have put in the chat both the links for tomorrow's webinar and the flyer. I'll put the flyer back in right now because I grab it real quick. I was trying to grab that. There's the flyer for tomorrow's webinar, which is the second one that Dr. Mottern's doing at the same time tomorrow. And so there's that. But Dr. Mottern, thank you very, very much.
Can I say one more thing?
On
that handout that you got today is a QR code and a link. If you enjoyed the presentation today, if you enjoyed our training today, then please go in and fill out that survey. It's only a few questions on there. If you didn't like it, just send me an email. We'll talk about it. But if you enjoyed it, please fill out the survey.
I will make sure I pull that link out and have that in the email so people can go to that as well. Doctor, thank you so very much.
My pleasure. We'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
We'll see y'all tomorrow. Hey, take care. You all have a wonderful day.